Hello, and welcome to another episode of Perfect Union Pending, where we explore the things that help move our democracy forward. Today's guest is Eva Posner, a sought after podcast guest known for her insightful, direct, and often humorous takes on democratic politics, campaigns, and ideology. She fearlessly pulls back the curtain on the political industrial complex, offering a candid perspective on its implication for the future of democracy. In 2026, Eva marks 10 years of powerful movement building with Avinco Strategies, leading a dedicated team with over 110 combined years of political experience. Her firm is committed to transforming the political landscape by supporting progressive causes and candidates. Beyond her work with Avinco, Eva offers free presentations and trainings to political operatives nationwide, sharing her expertise across the country. She champions local politics at a national scale, having successfully supported staff, candidates, and organizations across 17 states. Eva, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh goodness, gotta love technology. It's never a dull moment. So I'm grateful that we're able to get our tech stuff fixed, and we're here. What drew you to politics?
I mean, I think I've always been a pretty political person. My dad and I used to debate politics around the dinner table. So it's always been something that was kind of natural in my personality. I got my degree in political journalism. I've always been very obsessed with it. I'm kind of a history nerd. Politics is history in real time. So I really enjoy that aspect of it too.
Yeah.
But, for me, I was working in journalism, and then I got pregnant with my son, and around the same time as both the Trayvon Martin shooting happened, and then Sandy Hook happened not too far after that. And there were just these two like really stark moments of what kind of what kind of world am I bringing this child into, and making a decision to try to be, instead of just exposing problems, which I appreciate journalism for that, it really is an important part of society. But I realized that as a journalist, by the time I got the information, there was some, 6, 12, 18 rooms that it's gone through before it gets to me. And I wanted to be in those rooms where the decisions were made so that, I could try to prevent the tragedies that were ripping apart these families. And, in my mind at that time, as a brand new mom, were also an existential threat to my child.
Sure. Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, I think it's one of the reasons why I became an attorney was to have the knowledge that I could do to make change, to help change. And I think that that's important that we have, people that are looking to make change in the room where change is made, right? Like we can't solve every problem, but we can solve some problems, and sometimes that means that we have to have people that are available to help make those choices. So how these last few it seems like a day is a week, and a week is a month, and a month is a year, and a year seems like a decade these days with everything that's happening with between Iran and Donald Trump being Donald Trump. What are you doing these days to keep sane?
Oh, what a question. Yeah, time hasn't meant anything to me since about 2020. I think,
Okay.
my sense of time got warped before that because I started living my life in 2-year cycles instead of 1 year at a time. It was never 2018. 2017 doesn't exist. 2018 was a 2-year long situation, that kind of thing. And then COVID happened, and quarantine. I was in California, so we were quarantined for a really long time. And then, the world has just stayed on fire ever since. I got into politics professionally, or into campaigns professionally, in the 2014 cycle, and Donald Trump came down the escalator in 2015. So it's been a whirlwind for a long time, and the whirlwind only seems to be getting faster and more dizzying. So for me, there's a lot of, I filter my news intake quite a bit.
Sure.
I try to make sure that I'm not constantly online. I'm not constantly, doom scrolling or falling into just getting bombarding myself with tragedy at all times. I have, I have a couple of newsletters that make their way to my inbox for, one for the town that I live in, one for the town that I used to live in, and then, some political headlines here and there. I have Google alerts on my clients. And then beyond that, I just trust that if something is big enough, it will make it through to me. During the week on Sunday mornings, I read the paper newspaper like an old person. And I go through the A section and the nation and world section, and I get my like 10,000 foot view of the world from there. But otherwise, I really do try to just not live in it all the time, because I'm making decisions in it a lot. And
Sure.
there's a fine line between being informed and being so inside it and so worked up that you can't see straight. And I made that mistake during the first Trump administration, and it almost got me arrested by Border Patrol a couple times. So, I this time have taken a much leaner approach to my information intake, and that helps keep me sane. That, and I go outside a lot of walking the dog, touch grass, see the sky, hear the birds.
Nice. Sure.
That kind of thing. Like the world is still here. We've still got time to save it,
Yeah. The world is still here, thankfully, much to, I guess, Donald Trump's chagrin, which I live for those moments. What about democratic politics? Why did you decide to transition? Because we talked earlier about that you started out wanting to do policy work for a senator or your state senator. So you ended up on the campaign side. What did that look like? How did that transition happen?
Yeah, I mean, I did love the policy side, but I am not a patient person, and the government is slow. And there's nothing, there's a lot of good reasons for the government to be slow and a lot of things, but that's just not how my personality works. I am a chaos girly, function very well with 1,000 plates in the air and a bowl in the china shop. And so the campaign vibes were much more my style. You're always running out of time. You're always running out of money. You never have enough people. And like, you have to put together this puzzle, and then you're going to break it, and then you're going to put it together again, and then you're going to break it again, and then you're going to put it together again. I found that my skill set and my ability to see 10 steps ahead, and then my like calm in chaos, and like not just calm, but like I really do thrive in just like, this is a mess, what are we going to do, was much more in alignment with campaign life than with government life. And I have so much respect for the government staffs. I mean, governing is so difficult. And so I have a lot of respect for it. You have to know your limits, and I'm not that girl.
Okay, that's fair. And part of it is knowing that you're not that person, right? Like that when reality meets the what you want, that you have to go with what works, not what necessarily you wanted. So what are how do you decide what type of campaign you want to be a part of?
I have a set of questions that is the same 5 questions I ask every single potential client that crosses my desk. And I use those questions to vet for, values alignment, to make sure that we have similar goals and we are trying to do similar things in the world, so that I'm not, helping cause harm. I also vet for, how much they need me. The reality is that I have a lot of infrastructure, and I have a unique approach that not everybody needs and doesn't work for everyone. I think, more established candidates, people who have a lot of money, they don't need all of the infrastructure that I bring. And, I don't want to waste my capacity on somebody who, can get what they need from any run-of-the-mill campaign staffer. And then I also vet for what it is the campaign or organization needs, like service-wise, so that I make sure that I actually think that my infrastructure will help them. It is outside of my integrity to charge money for somebody to get something that they don't actually need. I don't like those extraneous costs. I came up in fundraising, and so I know how hard it is to raise the money that you're spending on vendors like me. And I want to make sure that there is a match there.
Sure. So what was I going to say? What type of campaign reform would you like to see happen? Because I think there's a lot of room. Yeah, I know that's a big question. I think there's a lot of room for that. Having never run a campaign myself, I have no knowledge. I can tell you from legal things that I would like to see done in the legal field, but I'd love to hear about, campaign finance reform, whatever, wherever you see the biggest red spots at.
Yeah, so I actually think my biggest thing would be we need to reform the relationship that consultants have with politics. The parties don't actually run our politics anymore. They're run by people like me, private companies, private citizens who don't answer to anybody. There's not a lot of regulations. I don't have to, I don't have to have a certification. There's not a bar association that can disbar me if I, do something illegal or terrible on a campaign. There is no like enforcement of a code of ethics. There's no kind of disclosure law that I have to tell the public what I'm doing. And I think that gives consultants way too much power. And I think
Okay.
a lot of people, there are a lot of good consultants, and I do not want to speak poorly of all of my peers, but there are also a lot of grifters and mercenaries and people who are not who have a lot of access and a lot of resources and a lot of money and a lot of influence on how our democracy functions every day, that are behind a curtain that there is just no way for the public to get to. And I think that is extremely dangerous.
Sure. Sure. So I think what we're talking about here is having some sort of either national or, statewide requirement for registration of some sort of ethics bar, ethics standards, that type of thing. Is that sound correct?
Yeah, I think that would be at minimum some kind of ethics standards and some kind of disclosure standards. The woman who cuts my hair, I live in Virginia, the woman who cuts my hair has to have 1,100 hours of training before she could put scissors to my hair. And that is not to say it's not important. There's a lot of safety standards. There's a lot of like hygiene standards and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, I can also put scissors to my own hair and like get a similar result. I mean, probably not, let's be real. But she has to have 1,100 hours of training to do that. And I just like woke up one day at 25 and was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pull the levers of power. And there was no one to ask permission. There was no one to stop me. There was no like training central, like, here's what's good, here's what's bad, do this, don't do that. There was none of that. And I really think it's a problem, in particular because politics nowadays functions as an industry more than anything else. And if you have a monetized interest in the outcome of elections, you have a problem. And I don't know, one way to solve that problem, I think, is to hold people like me to a higher standard.
Sure. That makes sense. What would you suggest as far as campaign finance reform?
I mean, it really depends. There's a lot of different rules in a lot of different jurisdictions, right?
Sure.
So one of the things that I think would be helpful would be to maybe have a uniform set of rules, at least statewide, if not across the country, of who you can and can't take money from, how much, when, and where,
Right.
because it's extremely difficult to not go sideways. It takes a lot of work and it makes it easy to be shady. I think that there is a space for, obviously, overturning Citizens United, I think, is like a really just easy fix for a lot of things that has to go. Having the ability of corporations and special interests to just pour crazy amounts of money and have money be speech. I mean, that's insane. I also think, though, there are campaign finance reforms that are well-intentioned that end up pushing things into the dark. So, for example, there's a state law in California called the Levine Act that requires that if a lobbyist or a principal or somebody who has a stake in a project gives over a certain amount of money to an elected official that is voting on that project. Within a year of the vote, that elected official has to recuse themselves.
Mm.
And in theory that makes sense because it would take away pay for play, but what actually happens is that those special interests end up just pushing that money into PACs and IEs that are not controlled by the candidate and have fewer disclosure requirements and fewer rules to play by, and they end up just spending crazy amounts of dark money instead. It pushes it darker.
Sure.
So instead of keeping it where the public can judge the information and use it as to whether or not to vote for that person. So I think there's some places where it's gone too far. I think there's places where it hasn't gone far enough. I'm just starting to work in areas with public matching funds and things like that. So I haven't fully formed an opinion on that I think is interesting. I think there's a lot you could do with campaign finance reform. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. What does IE mean?
Independent expenditure.
Okay.
So it's a committee that is not controlled by the candidate. It's another word for a PAC, essentially. And
Okay.
they don't have the same campaign finance limitations as a candidate controlled committee.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Whenever I hear an acronym for something that I don't know about, because in my world growing up, I use Internet Explorer. So, that tells you how old I am. But anyway, so you offer free presentations and trainings to political operatives nationwide. What do those look like?
My favorite one to give is called Please Don't Run for Office. The idea is that, it's not for everyone. And if you are doing it for an ego trip or because it is the next logical step in your career or because your daddy's buying you a seat, that maybe you should sit the hell down and let some other people who actually are interested in solving problems, take the spot. And I like to, explore the relationship with power, what it actually means to be an elected official and what those responsibilities are, as well as the actual, the logistical hurdles of running for office. Because running for office is a life decision, like
Sure.
buying a house or getting a dog or getting married. It is something that is going to impact the way you live your life every day for somewhere between 6 months and the rest of your life, depending on how successful you are. And there is a lot of focus on recruiting candidates, rightfully so, across the country from both parties. Everybody's saying, come on, you can do it. You're amazing. Step up. You can do it. We're going to support you. Everything's going to be great. And then they don't tell you what it actually takes, what it actually
Right.
requires of you as a human being. And I've seen people ruin their lives. I've seen them get divorced. I've seen them take second mortgages out on houses. I've seen them cause rifts in their families. I've seen them lose their job. I have seen people bust their mental health. I have seen people have, some serious, long-term traumatic things happen to them because nobody tells you the reality of being on the campaign trail and what it means for your life. And so I really like to take the mystery out of it and make sure that when people decide to take the leap, that they're doing it from an informed place so that they don't lose touch with their humanity. Because when that happens, that's when they make bad decisions that impact us negatively as Americans.
Sure. So you teach people how to run for office, and then do you manage multiple campaigns at the same time or just one?
Multiple. We have 22 clients right now, and we'll probably get up to 35 or 40 before November.
Okay. Because of midterms and all that fun stuff. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And do you focus on statewide or nationwide?
So I prefer to do local elections, local and state elections, but I will take them in any state in the union. So local politics at a national scale. I think that all communities deserve access to the political infrastructure that gets them empowers them to have the tools they need to make change. And a
Sure.
lot of communities don't have that. And so I lots of big city work, but then also rural Nevada and rural Nebraska and rural Georgia and on and on and on. So city council races, DA races, state legislative races. I've got a governor's race. I've got a couple of congressionals. I also do nonprofit work and PACs and community organizing organizations
Cool.
and Democratic parties.
Can you share who you're managing, or is that like not allowed? I'm not familiar with that.
I mean, it's not allowed. It's more that I am not going to sit here and list off my entire client list. And if I pick
Oh
a
no.
favorite, I'm gonna have an issue.
Sure.
I will tell you the governor's race, because that's the highest level ballot that I've got. I'm working for Alexis Hill. I'm doing her fundraising. She is the primary challenger for Democratic governor of Nevada,
Okay.
and cool as hell. You should check her out.
Cool. Okay. I'm in California, so my opportunity there is limited as far as helping on a campaign. But I would certainly be interested
Where
in
are you
having
in
them on the.
California?
I'm in San Diego, so
Oh, I'm okay. So I lived in San Diego for 12 years. I started the company in San Diego, and I have a lot of San Diego clients. Supervisor Monica Montgomery Stepp is my client. Councilmember Henry Foster is my client.
very
And
cool.
yeah, so I worked for a number of folks there, and I've got nonprofits, and that Balboa Park ballot measure that you just saw in the news, that's me. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Now, where are you located at? I didn't.
I'm in Richmond, Virginia.
Okay, so you're back east. Nice. I haven't been back east in years. So I loved Virginia when I was there. It was beautiful. Quite a beautiful place. So that's really fascinating as far as like don't run for office. I think that's a great name. I'm sure a lot of people find that intriguing and certainly the contrarian perspective of things. So why do you yourself not run for office?
Because I have no desire to put myself through that. I think I eat, sleep, dream, breathe political campaigns,
Sure.
and I love it. But I have something going for me that my clients do not, and that is I am pretty anonymous. The public doesn't know who I am, in spite of all
Sure.
the podcasts or whatever. Like, I'm not a public official. And the pressure that I see them
All
put
right.
themselves under, the public judgment. In particular, I work for a lot of women candidates and women of color candidates, and they get threats, and they get, they're I've seen my clients' kids have gotten doxxed. I've had a client who had somebody threaten to burn her house down with her family inside. I've had clients stalked by, yeah, it's been pretty crazy. And so I think I'm much better suited to be the attack dog from the back than I am to handle the pressure of putting my own name out there. And I
Okay.
think I can impact more change doing more than one campaign at a time than I could if I just ran for one office.
Sure. That's fair. And it seems like you like what you do quite a bit. So why change it if you don't, if there's no reason to? It makes a ton of sense too. So
I'm kind of addicted to it.
kind of addicted to it. That's interesting. What is your favorite part about running a campaign besides election night when you win? I got that one. That one's easy.
That one is easy. Yeah, I mean, I think my favorite thing about it is that I'm never bored.
Okay.
Every day is different. You're one day you can be sitting in a meeting about pig farming, and then the next day you are like on a tour of like, refugee resettlement nonprofit. And the next day you're doing a deep dive into water policy so that you can write a platform for, something. And then the next day you are sitting in a community meeting learning the ins and outs of community and relational organizing in, multi-faith situations. Like, it's just never boring. And there's always a fire to put out. There's always someone to yell at. There's always, I'm a fiery lady, and it really feeds my need to just constantly be going.
Sure. Sure. And it sounds like it'd be quite a bit of fun. I mean, my only experience with the campaign is when I voted for people, and or what I've seen on West Wing. That's the extent of my. Actually, I take that back. And what I've seen on what was it called, Franklin and Bash, but very limited otherwise. And I know for a fact that those are all very skewed entertainment type things. I'm sure there might be some truth to them, but very limited. So, what's been your favorite campaign to work on so far?
Supervisor Montgomery Stepp. When she ran for San Diego City Council in 2018, we were outspent 5-1, and then we won by 12 points. And it was the most horizontal campaign I have ever been a part of to this day. She really challenged me as a person to understand and really changed my relationship to campaigns, because the way she ran her campaign and the way she held me accountable to her model taught me that campaigns can and should be infrastructure for the change that a community wants to see, not just this idea that some strategist comes in, parachutes down, and like shouts at the public about what it is that the poll numbers say. And so, I mean, that campaign, 2018, that city council campaign changed my life, and I have worked with her ever since. So her reelection in 2022, and then the special election for the Board of Supervisors in 2023, and then now we have her reelection in 2026. And working with her it's the best. I love all of my clients. They're all wonderful, but Monica changed my life.
Okay, that's fair. You don't have to, and I totally get that you don't want to pick a favorite per se, but I figure over time there might be one that leads the pack on that one.
Yeah,
what do you mean by?
I followed her off a cliff.
Okay, what do you mean by horizontal? You said the horizontal campaign. What does that mean?
So most campaigns traditionally have a very like vertical hierarchy.
Sure.
So it's, you have the campaign manager or the consultant, and then below those people you have, a fundraising director or a field director or a communications director, and then below those people they have somebody, and then below those people they have somebody, and it depends on the size of the campaign. Excuse me. It depends on the size of the campaign as to how many layers there are, but it tends to be a very top-down industry of there's like this one person at the top working with the candidate on, whatever the strategy is that the candidate thinks they're going to do. Hopefully they're partners with the candidate. A lot of consultants or a lot of campaign operatives think of themselves more as puppet masters than partners. So you have that going too. That dynamic is weird. And then it's just very top down. We said, do this, do this. Monica ran her campaign by committee. The community was extremely involved. I wrote a campaign plan for her, and she made me defend it in front of like 90 people. Not really. It was actually only like 5, but it just felt at the time, I was like, what are you doing? Who are these people? What do they know? Can we trust them? What if they leak something? Like, politics makes you very paranoid and very protective. Sure. And she said, this is my community. And and what they know is this community better than you. And if they don't think your strategy is going to work, you're going to need to write a new strategy. So figure it out. And, there was a fundraising committee, and there was a community organizing committee, and everything was really relational and grassroots and bottom up. And it was beautiful. It was held together by duct tape. It was wild. I mean, it was a wild time, but it was such a stunning victory, and no one in the like political echo chamber in San Diego saw it coming, but the community did. And so I really tried to carry that ethos forward and try to make sure that I am partnering with the people on the ground who know their communities better than I do. That I come into this with, I have an expertise in political campaigns. That does not mean that everything I say is the right thing to do for your community. And sure. You have the expertise on the ground in your community. And if we put those two things together, then we can run something that is authentic to the candidate, as that they'll be proud of, win or lose at the end of the day, and also will put at the forefront the meeting the people in the community where they are and actually having representative democracy that has listened to people in order to get to victory, as opposed to has done a lot of mass broadcasting, setting money on fire and yelling at people about what they think they should care about.
Right. So you do a lot of focus groups, I'm guessing.
No, actually, just a lot of canvassing.
Okay.
A lot of canvassing, deep canvassing. And some focus groups, some polling. I don't love polling. There's some new technologies that we've been able to use to do some like long form interviews and things like that asynchronously. But really just like slow roll, multi-cycle relational organizing is really the key.
What I was going to ask you, what is something, so most of us have no idea what a campaign looks like. I mean, again, we have very skewed versions of that. I guess my question to you is, what would you tell the general public about a campaign that would help us make better decisions and to be better informed about a campaign?
That is such an interesting question. Wow. I think the thing that I would say is that like campaigns are collections of people, and it's literally about who can collect the most people by a certain day and get them to do the same thing. And so none of these candidates can do this without other human beings. The donors are humans, the volunteers are humans, the staff are humans, the consultants are humans, the candidate is a human. It is a human enterprise. It's a giant group project. And you actually have significantly more influence than you think you do on this process just by showing up. If you show up in the campaign office, show up to a canvas, show up to a fundraiser, the candidate will remember that. And you have the ability to then potentially build a relationship with a future elected official. And so campaigns, what I would say, are actually a fantastic access point for the public to influence their elected officials, because they are like, we're just constantly looking for people. We need people for everything. And so if you're somebody who can take the time or has the ability or the resources to show up for a campaign in any way, you have at that point gained a level of access in your democracy and a level of influence in your democracy that is above and beyond another member of the general public who is not showing up. So I highly recommend volunteering for a campaign, not necessarily because you think this person is Jesus, but because they're going to win.
Right.
And they're going to be making these big decisions. And don't you want them to listen to you? Don't you want them to pick up the phone when they're like doing some work in your neighborhood, and I don't know, they left the power lines uncovered or whatever it is. Don't you want them to pick up the phone when you have a problem and try to solve it for you or with you? And if you want that to happen, you have to build a relationship. And if you get in on the campaign level before they're important, then they'll remember you.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of it from a volunteer perspective, that how important that could be for someone. I've thought about volunteering, but to be frank, I haven't volunteered for a campaign yet. I'm not saying that's a never, it's just a not yet. So how often I don't know. You see I think West Wing being the only one that I have a reference to, and I'm not saying it's accurate at all, but because you see them volunteering for the campaign and then they get transitioned into actually working for the policy side of things. Does that happen ever, or is it just a Hollywood thing where you volunteer and then they hire you later?
No, I mean, it does happen. It happens less than Hollywood makes it look like.
Sure,
because
of course.
There's more need for more people on the campaign than there are in the office. So like you have a campaign that needs, 50 volunteers at all times or whatever, and then the office has 5 spots. Like it's gonna filter. But yeah, if you volunteer or work on a campaign, that's a great way to end up in a public sector job.
Gotcha.
And the political hires, like the electeds, are allowed to hire in their offices with in a different way than like having to go through all of the official HR for like a city or a county or a state. That's not to say that there isn't, HR involved, but they have a lot more leeway to just pull in whoever they want on the political side. And then there's also like relationships. Maybe you don't want a job in their office, but maybe you want an appointment to a board or commission later. Maybe, there are boards and commissions. I mean, San Diego County has dozens of commissions that do work on women's rights and environment and parks and recreation and, the Civil Service Commission, all kinds of things. And so if you have an issue that you care about, there is probably a committee somewhere that does some work that needs volunteers from the community to be appointed into those positions. And those appointments go through the elected officials. So, and they're more likely to appoint people they know. Politics is an access game, and campaigns are where the access point is. The gate is the widest.
Sure. Okay. That makes sense. Let's see, what else was there? I had a question about, so do you have people that work under you that work for campaigns, or are you a one-woman band, so to speak?
Oh, no, I have a lot of employees. How many employees do I have? I have 13 employees.
Okay.
And most of the staff works on campaigns and does like the political side. I also have the operational team that does, HR and marketing and things like that. But everybody touches the campaign at some point with something. So I have myself and then my leadership team that they run their teams, and they run general consulting and fundraising teams. And then we have strategists under them that are the like point of contact for the campaign. And then they run, each of them runs 3, 5, 8 campaigns, depending on what's going on. And I also run my own campaigns, and all of us have somebody that we lead on. But no, I was a one-woman show for the first few years. But at this point I have a very lovely team of like-minded and competent and creative and diverse individuals who help me keep this shit going.
Nice. That's good, because I know I'm a solo practitioner attorney myself, and so I wear all the hats, and it can be exhausting at points because there's not enough hours in the day for me to be able to do everything that needs to get done. So I can imagine that it's very similar when you're running this show by yourself there. So any words of wisdom for people that might want to look into doing what you do?
Yeah. I think first things first is just to make sure that you understand what problem it is that you're trying to solve. Like, what is your goal in this space? What's your North Star for getting involved in politics? Because this industry is crazy. It's toxic. It is full of people who all think they're the next AOC or the next Barack Obama or the next George Bush. And, there's a lot of power struggles. There's a lot of gatekeeping. There's a lot of lying. There's a lot of backstabbing. There's a lot of saying you're going to do things you're not going to do. I mean, there's a lot of just drama. And you're going to be faced with moral dilemmas, both like from a like transactional standpoint, but then also from the existential nature of politics. Do I want to support this? Is this candidate good for the public? Those kinds of things. And keeping in mind, that ultimate goal that you are working toward is the thing that is going to keep you sane and keep you going when everything feels like it's spinning out of control. And if you're entering the industry now, it's already out of control. And so
Sure.
you're going to step into a blender. And I highly suggest keeping your spot on the wall so you don't get dizzy.
Okay, fair enough. I think that's wise and important that you're framing it and, in what your priorities are and what your purpose is. What What about the prison? Oh my gosh. Sorry. My bachelor's is in criminology. So we talk about the prison industrial complex. What about the political industrial complex is certainly more relevant than the prison industrial complex at the moment. What about the political industrial complex would you say is our greatest stumbling block towards a better, more just society?
I mean, I think so. First off, I'm just going to take an aside to talk about the prison industrial complex because I'm a criminal
Sure.
justice reform really, and I do the politics of criminal justice reform. I do a lot of DAs races, sheriffs races, judges races, and it's an incredibly important concept. Part of they're intersectional. So I can use that as an example because part of that is that okay, law enforcement has a political arm. Law enforcement has lobbyists. Law enforcement has consultants. There is an entire law enforcement like political mechanism, and it is bigger than either party actually, and it's much more sophisticated, and nobody ever talks about it. And those folks are paid to represent this side of an issue, right? The side in which they shovel poor black and brown people into these detention camps and use them for slave labor. And now then you have those people staying in the same space as someone like me who is trying to increase representation in government, make sure that more black and brown people have access to power, right? Okay, and you have those two things clashing, and we're both paid interests representing our ideology, and we're competing at all times for whatever our piece of the pie is, right? And that competition is in victories and losses, yes, but it's also in money and funding and the economic output that is dictated by the outcome of an election. And you can trace that issue by issue across our government as it exists right now. The other thing to understand, going like away from the issue specific piece, is that while the political parties are technically like they're small d democratic entities, right? The DNC is a national party that is made up of delegates from the states, which has a state party that is made up of delegates from the counties, which has a county party that is made up of delegates that are elected in whatever like districts or whatever that they represent in order to vote on who they're going to endorse and this, that, and the other. And that is all true. And it is one of those ways in which, the political parties are actually relatively representative of the general public if you like know where you're looking, but that's a different topic. However, it's not the political parties that are making the big strategic decisions. It is not the political parties that are putting out the ads. It's not the political parties that are putting out the messaging. It is vendors like me.
Okay.
It is they hire us to do this work. They hire us to create the strategy, to put out the product, to do the polling, to do the commercials. If you didn't like Kamala's messaging in the presidential election, like, yes, there's blame to go around, but the piece, everybody, the Democrats have a messaging issue. The Democrats have a vendor issue.
Yeah.
There's a private industry behind all of this that is competing for contracts, and they're not chosen by these elected delegates. They're chosen through this like closed door RFP process. It's not healthy, and it's not actually representative of what the public wants. That's part of why there's such a disconnect between what the public says they want, what election results say, what poll after poll says about issue after issue, and then you don't have the output come in from the elected officials, because there's this like middle ground, this wall that blocks the input. And there's like, 6 old white guys on K Street in Washington, D.C. who need to make money they need to make their money for the cycle. So they decide to buy a whatever $1 billion TV buy. And that's our campaign strategy, because it makes the most money, not because it persuades people, not because it turns people out, but because that's how they get paid.
Right. Yeah, what does it mean? So again, my reference is very limited to Hollywood, and I get that. Bruno Gianelli on West Wing talks about I get a percentage of the ad buy. I don't. What does that mean specifically?
Okay, so let's say you are running for office, okay,
Sure.
and you decide, and you hire me, and you're going to run for mayor of San Diego, and San Diego is a really big city, so you can't knock every door, and you're going to raise a whole ton of money, and the strategic question becomes like, how do you reach all these people so that they know that you're the person to vote for, right? So
Sure.
that's the question that is then answered by some kind of voter contact mechanism. That might be TV, that might be mail, it might whatever. When I make your TV ad, if my contract was written that way, which my contracts are not, they're retainer contracts, I do it differently. But most consultants, if I make your TV ad, I go to the ad buyer, and the ad buyer tells me, okay, this TV ad is $200,000. I come back to you and I say, this TV ad is $225,000.
Mm.
And I mark it up, and I make money on the markup. And then the ad buy, they've already marked up on their end, whatever that is. And then they also kick back part of the buy back to me as like a finder's fee. So I'm double dipping.
Gotcha.
Now, I want to be very clear, because I just put this all in the first person, that I do not do that. But that is how a lot of it works. And so you have to then beg the question in those situations, are we doing the TV buy because it is the best way to talk to people? It's the best way to break through to them. It's the best way to get them to turn out. It's the best way to engage our democracy. Or are we doing the TV buy because that strategist that you hired gets a buyback?
Gotcha. So the ad buy is that percentage that they get for finding for implementing the ads, essentially. Mm-hmm. Okay. That makes sense. Again, they don't explain that. All you get is by context in the television show. So since you work on campaign, I figure why not ask you. What? I don't know. I don't know any more questions that I had off the top of my head to be able to ask you. What would you share with the general public about, kind of like final thoughts about campaigns and getting involved, and what would, if you had the largest megaphone, which you have a bigger megaphone than many, what would you share with the world, I guess, would be the best thing?
I mean, I think the biggest thing would just be to say that I understand why voting feels pointless sometimes, and I actually do understand the whole concept of like both parties feel the same. I get that, the managed atrophy that the Democrats often put forward feels the same as the active destruction that the Republicans put forward when you can't pay your bills, when you are choosing between healthcare and food, when you lose your insurance. I completely understand all of that. That said, even though the revolution is not going to happen on the campaign trail is harm mitigation. And it is a tool that we have in our toolbox to be able to protect our communities, to be able to implement the laws that at the very least, like, protect you, your friends, and your family, right? Your bubble is protected at the local level. The local campaigns, the city council campaigns, the mayor's races, the county board of supervisors, the district attorneys, those are so much more important than I can ever tell you. And those people are much more heavily accountable to you than Donald Trump is ever going to be. And you have the potential to genuinely increase your quality of life over the course of just a couple months if you get involved locally. And so I understand why it's a tool that not everybody wants to exercise, but I also just have to say, like, surrendering this space just gives into fascism faster. And so I highly, highly recommend getting involved at the local level. Volunteer for a campaign. Get that access. Get that influence. It doesn't have to belong to them. They're borrowing it from you. So take up the space in the room.
Okay. I think those are all very, very wise. It's funny because I got called for jury duty not long ago, and I say that because they never pick me because I'm an attorney already, and they don't want you don't want an attorney on your jury most of the time. There's a few exceptions to that, but for the most part, but it's really interesting to get to see people's perspective and see how they change how their view of the justice system changes as they interact with the justice system, and not from a litigant perspective, but from the neutral observer that's supposed to be a jury, right? Obviously, as a volunteer for a campaign, they're not necessarily neutral, but they're not looking to have the same pull that as an attorney that you have invested in a system, right? Like that, or advocate or judge or whatnot. Eva, it's been great speaking with you. Any final thoughts before we let you go? I know your time is pretty precious, so I don't want to keep you too long.
No, I appreciate it. This has been fun. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Where can people find you if they'd like to reach out and talk with you more or schedule you for one of your fun presentations?
evincostrategies.com. So it's EVINCO strategies.com.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was Eva Posner, who is a campaign strategist and absolutely fantastic, interesting to learn more about campaigns and how they affect our democracy and some great ways that we can improve. Until next time, keep working and keep trying, and certainly let's make our democracy work better for us. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next episode.